Maybe. Yeah. We're on.
Good evening, everyone. Chris Schultz along with Gary Hoff. We are doing our 2019, this is podcast number 2, Gary.
Number 2.
How you doing?
I'm doing good. Ready to go. A lot of interesting games this year.
Yeah.
So let's get to some of them.
It's good to see you. We're going to do some, we're going to talk about the schedules a little bit. We're not sure how long this thing will go. We will go through every team.
All 16.
Hey, one thing I want to throw out there at you, I don't know if you know anything about it. There are rule changes, not for this year, 2019, but for 2020 on the playoff end of things. Are you up to date on that, Gary?
A little bit. Gone is the 6. Well, not this year, but next year, gone is the 6 wins. You got to scoot over. Our fans can't see.
Okay, I'm here.
Gone are the 6 in automatically in, which I think a lot of people like. It will eliminate this people trying to maybe schedule the softer schedules, just to get the 6 wins.
Right.
And you get a little bit more points for good losses. Right. Scheduling the tougher teams, losing, you get more points, playoff points. In terms of those losses,
I don't think you get points for a good loss because you get points based on your opponent's record.
Right.
You could lose 66-0, or you could lose 7-6, and I believe you get the same amount of points.
Okay, understood.
So
yes, you're
that
right.
was one of the things as an athletic director that I didn't like about it, but I do think it's probably a good thing. Me and my school's having their first varsity team this year, and we just went out and, we had 0 wins last year as a varsity program, so anybody we play is most likely better than us. But we looked at it down the road, and what I came to the conclusion, and our head coach came to the conclusion, is it will make it easier scheduling. But I don't think you will see big Class A teams coming down to play, smaller teams, even though they're good. I think what will happen is the good Class A schools will play the good Class A schools, or even lower level Class A schools will play other Class A schools. But I don't think you'll see people playing up and down because it's going to hurt somebody somewhere.
Right.
But I do think games will get scheduled.
I think it's important to be in a conference.
Yeah, that'll help.
You got to be in a league, you got to be in a conference, an association, whatever, and you're going to play teams mostly in your division.
Yeah.
In your class.
So my school is most likely going to end up Division 6. We would try and play Division 5 and 6 schools for the most part. We do have a couple of schools this year that would fall into 7 or 8, and we do have a couple that would fall into 3 and 4. So it kind of balances out for us. I don't know if those teams will want to play us in the future that are a little bit bigger than us, or those that are lower than us. If it's all about the playoffs. If it's just about, some schools don't even worry about the playoffs, and that's okay.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good thing in general, but that was something I wanted to throw out there. Did you have any other thoughts on that? If not, we can get into scheduling.
Quickly, you know what division you're going to be in prior to the season that's starting.
That's huge, yeah.
Vice guessing and waiting until after week 9 to know what division you're in and know what teams you might be playing. You'll know that as the season goes and then before the season. So, that's a little bit of a twist as well.
All right. Well, cool.
Yeah.
Let's dive into our schedule analysis.
Are we on?
I think I'm on over here. Okay. Hopefully we are. Yeah, we're cooking along. So we're ruining our podcast, but we're moving along. Okay. So let's jump into the schedule, and we're going to start in the SEC, and we're going to go with Monroe. They were 7-4 last year. They were in the playoffs. They have, it looks like a 5-game league schedule, and they have 4 non-league contests. Why don't you talk about the teams that jump out at you there?
I highlighted 4 games. It's cool that they start off with Roosevelt. I think that's
Why not Roosevelt week 1?
That's a pretty darn good matchup right there. They're on the road.
Okay.
That won't be easy. I think, did they finish 6-4 last year?
Wyandotte was 6-4 last year. You'll be hard-pressed to find them with that many losses in the season.
Right.
I don't want to say it was a down year because they made the playoffs, but it was a little down by their standards.
I think they'll be strong this year.
Yeah, they're very well coached. Ron Adams over there. So
that's a tough opener for the Trojans. That would be an excellent win. Another game I had highlighted is of course Saline.
Yeah, obviously.
To win the SEC, you got to beat Saline. They got to go through them, and they've got them at home this year.
Okay.
Which is nice. And of course, the crosstown rival Bedford. You love Bedford this year. You think they're going to be strong. New coach in Bedford.
Bedford was 6-5 last year, made the playoffs.
All right. How will they adjust to the new coach? That's usually a tough thing, but you never know. And they got that game at home. So Saline at home, Bedford at home, and the closer at Lake Orion. They lost that last year.
Right.
And that's another tough game. So for the Trojans, Coach Ontario didn't do himself any favors. He's not one of those coaches that schedules to get the 6 wins. He opened up with Roosevelt's a very quality program, and closes the season with a big school on the road at Lake Orion. And both those games are on the road. Both bookend games are on the road. So those are tough games. They're not playing Jackson this year. They lost to them. They replaced them with
Fenton, who was 7-3 and made the playoffs last year. So that's not an easy game.
No.
At all. Okay, so there's the Monroe Trojans. Next, we have the Bedford Kicking Mules, and they were 6-5, like we had mentioned earlier. They made the playoffs. I want you to give us their thoughts or your thoughts on the Bedford Mules. Go ahead, Gary.
Yeah, you've mentioned that you like them. I don't know about the 2019 Kicking Mules quite as much as you do, but they do open up at home against Sterling Heights Stevenson. That's another big school, and they got the best of them last year. Did Sterling Heights, and they're looking to get a little bit of revenge at home. That's an interesting opener. And other games I had highlighted, of course, in the SEC, you're talking about Saline, and they got them at home. So that's an interesting matchup. And of course, the tough road games at Pioneer, at Monroe. Those games will be difficult. So this, the schedule. If they can start off at home, it's interesting. If the schedule is right on MHSAA, they start off with 4 home games in a row, and they end up with 4 out of 5 on the road. So with the new coach, maybe that's something that that's a good thing for them. They start those first 4 games off at home,
right?
And I can see them going 4-0 there. Sterling Heights, Stevenson, Flushing, Ypsi, Lincoln, and Skyline.
Yeah, and I think
Lincoln, Ypsi Community and Skyline. I think they can start out 4-0 there.
Flushing will be a tough game. Yeah. Flushing was 7-3 last year. They were a playoff team, so that's they probably don't know a lot about Flushing. I know I probably don't.
No.
I just know that they made the playoffs and they play up there in the Flint area.
Well, I think they played Airport in years past. One of the playoff games quite a few years ago, but that's all I know about them. But yeah, they start off at home. They come out of there 4-0. They go to Huron, and then the big home matchup with Saline.
Okay.
So we'll see.
See what happens.
Yeah.
There. All right. Well, let's jump over to let's go to the Downriver League, and let's go to the only team we cover, which would be the Carlson Marauders, and I'm going to pull them up here on my iPad. And Carlson was 8-2 last year. Normally, the schedule doesn't change much because the Downriver League had 10 teams, but with Melvindale leaving to go out to the Western Wayne, that leaves them an opening in the schedule, and Carlson went out and got themselves a nice non-league opponent. Gary, why don't you talk about Carlson's
Harper
schedule?
Woods is a school that's jumped up 300, 400 kids in the enrollment this year. I'm not sure exactly why. You might know, but I don't know why they jumped up so many students. They had 500 kids last year. They're over 800 now. Made the playoffs last year, and I don't know if they got one of those coaches that's just
brought in a coach. Can't think of his name off the top of my head.
Yeah,
I don't want to butcher it. I think I know who it is. But anyways, he came over from East English Village.
Okay.
The Ville was very good while he was there.
Okay. Well, there you have it.
He took his
brand
and act over to Harper Woods, and Harper Woods has nice facilities over there. Yeah. So they ought to be a pretty good Week 7 test for Carlson. Harper Woods was 8-3 last year and made the playoffs.
Yeah.
Why don't you touch on the rest of the schedule? Games that jump
some of the
out
games that got highlighted on the road here. Game 2, Woodhaven.
Yep.
That was a great contest last year.
They were 8-2
You
last
were at
year.
that
Woodhaven
game.
was.
You were at that game, weren't you?
I think I was.
Yeah, I think you were at that game. It was
Woodhaven won 49-35, though. I know that.
Okay, and so that's a tough contest. That might be the battle for the conference right there in week 2. Very well could be. Another one I mentioned, highlighted here, at Trenton. Kind of a border war there.
Well, what happened last year was Carlson beat Trenton in week 2. It was, maybe 35-24 or something like that, but I don't think that game was that close. But then Trenton played them in the playoffs and beat them 22-21 to kind of shock the Marauders. So that was one. I think another game that jumps out is certainly Allen Park, who was 9-3 last year. They were in the playoffs as well.
They got them at home.
So that ought to be a tough game for the Marauders of Carlson.
It should be your usual tough games, and you got your 3-4 teams, and then a couple of also-rans in there. But Harper Woods is interesting. We'll see what they bring to the table.
That'll be interesting.
That is on the road.
Yeah. So okay, let's jump over to the LCAA, and we are going to talk about the Dundee Vikings, who were 5-4 last year. The nice thing about the LCAA is their non-league schedule is 2 non-league games in week 1 and week 2, and then they get into the meat of the schedule. Gary, your thoughts on Dundee?
Well, they open up with Summit Academy. You know a little bit about them, but
Summit was 5-4 last year,
right?
And they're improving. They got a lot of kids playing football over there, so they're going to be better than years past.
And Stockbridge at home, so they travel to Romulus. Got Stockbridge at home. I'm thinking they can come away with 2-0 there.
Yeah, Stockbridge was 1-8 last year,
right?
And Dundee did beat them 54-8.
Okay, and
last season.
And then if they come out of there 2-0, that's when the season starts for them. They are on the road at Hudson, which is not an easy place to play.
Right.
Most teams do not come out of there with a W. So at Hudson, then home against Ida, Blissfield, Brooklyn Columbia Central. The list is the LCA. I've said it the last few years. It's a juggernaut. There's no easy games. There's very, very, very few breaks in the LCAA, and starting off with Hudson, Ida, and Blissfield.
Yeah, and I highlighted week 4 Ida, who was 8-3 last year, and then week 7 Brooklyn Columbia Central, who was 9-2. Obviously, both playoff teams. So they're going to have their work cut out for them down there. But I tell you what, from I would think, coaches, players, and fan perspective, you'd rather play a tough schedule, and I'm sure they're excited to play in their league again.
We're not going to talk about records, or we'll get to that down the road. But
down the road, we don't know anything about the teams.
We don't.
Sometimes at this time, in June, you don't even know who's going out for the team.
That's true.
Or who's moving in, or what's going on. Exactly.
That's right.
So, all right, let's jump into Erie Mason. Erie Mason Eagles. They were 1-8 last year. Once again, same thing. First 2 weeks of the season are non-league games. Why don't you talk about those games?
Yeah, I got the first 2 games highlighted. They need to win those 2 games.
Yeah, they do. I agree.
It's not going to be easy. Summerfield's is a quality program. They don't have bad years over there. They're very consistent.
One of the things that I would think would help Erie Mason this year, they lost 41-34 last year. They have a brand new coach over at Summerfield. Sometimes that makes a difference. If you're bringing in a veteran coach, maybe it doesn't so much, but when you bring in a younger guy, maybe with a little bit less experience, there is an advantage for the coach who's been around his program a little bit. So, I think that's a winnable game in week 1, and then week 2.
It's at home.
Okay.
Week 2 at BD.
Okay.
They can get that W.
They can, yeah. Britton Deerfield was 1-8 last year, and that was Mason's only win, a 34-26 victory.
Right.
And I do think Britton Deerfield will be much improved this year.
Okay.
They're well coached.
I think Mason will be improved too.
Yeah, well, they will.
Yeah.
One of the things that Britton Deerfield did was they kept their JV team together.
Okay.
They tried to keep all their freshmen and sophomores down, played a schedule, and then I think you're going to see some of those kids move up. We played them in JV last year, and they had an offensive line that looked like a varsity line, all sophomores, and then a real nice young quarterback who was the coach's son. I'm assuming he's going to step in this year.
Sure.
Other than that, I don't know much about BD. What else on that schedule?
Once they get through those 2 games, just like for Dundee, here comes the LCAA right in your face. But the first 2 are at home, Hillsdale and Hudson.
Well, and I highlighted week 3
because
if they're 2-0 and they're playing Hillsdale, who was 8-2 last year, and kind of beat them, doubled them up 52-26 last year, that's a big game for Erie Mason. And if they can compete, and win that game, that really is going to go a long way for them.
It comes down to defense with Erie.
It really does.
It comes down to defense. You're talking Hillsdale, Hudson, Ida, and BCC. First 4 games in the LCAA. That's brutal. That's tough. You know, but we do think Mason will be improved this year. They're going to improve every year. You know, over the next couple of years, I do believe in this year. Let's see. I think they take that next step forward, and they really surprise some people.
Right. Okay. Well, let's jump into Ida. The Ida Blue Streaks were 8-3 last year, and same thing. First 2 weeks are non-league games. Give us your thoughts on that.
I love the first game. I love Ida versus Airport. I think that's a great game.
Airport was 4-5 last year. I'm you know, Ida has opened up the last 5 seasons against Jefferson,
right? And
now they're switching over to Carlton Airport, who's a Huron League team. I like that as well.
That's a great game. It's at home for Ida. I think Airport's going to give them all they can handle. I'm not going to pick a winner, but I think that's just going to be a great football game. You got the Huron League versus the LCA. There's going to be a lot of, you know, trying to prove what league is better.
Right.
And I think there's going to be a little bit of that going on. Okay. Week 2 at Lake Fenton. That won't be an easy game.
That was a 28-22 win for the Blue Streaks last year.
It's a little bit of a drive, and that's a good, you know, Ida, Coach Potter, he's not afraid to schedule. You know, he's not that coach, again, that just tries to get to 6. He's got 2 tough games off the bat.
Right.
And then right into the LCA, BCC, Dundee, Mason. And the 2 games, 3 other games I had highlighted was at Dundee. Of course, anytime Ida and Dundee play, that's a big game, backyard brawl. And home against Hudson and at Hillsdale. Those are the games I think they got to win.
Yeah. And, I mean, one of the games that I had written down that jumps out is if they could start off 2-0, then they have Brooklyn Columbia Central, who was 9-2 last year. So week 3. So that could,
that's a tough schedule.
It is a tough schedule.
I just got a tough schedule for themselves.
I agree with that. Yeah. So, all right, let's switch over to the Tri-County Conference, and we are going to jump into Summerfield.
Congratulations to the Bulldogs and their state championship and
baseball.
Baseball. I think
that just goes to show you they have athletes over there.
Yeah, they do.
And the Bulldogs were 5-4 last year. And why don't we jump into their schedule right away? We already talked about week 1. They play Erie Mason.
Right. The games I had highlighted was home against Clinton, and of course on the road in week 9 against Whiteford.
Sure.
I think those are the games. You know, Sand Creek's going to be a tough opponent. Morency's had some years in there.
Pittsford beat them last year.
Sure.
10-0, and they were a playoff team.
But when you're the Bulldogs, you want to beat Clinton and you want to beat Whiteford, and I think those are they got Clinton at home and Whiteford on the road. But you know, this is again the TCC's. It's a tough conference.
I wonder why don't Dundee and Summerfield play?
I don't know.
They're literally right down the street or field from each other.
Sure.
Kyle? I don't know. I mean, I'm just maybe it doesn't fit into the
one's
schedule.
Division 5, the other
one's a bigger school. Okay, that's a good point.
Division 5, Division 8.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Okay.
Yeah, but maybe someday.
Someday down the road.
Yeah.
All right, next in the Tri-County Conference, we have Whiteford, Ottawa Lake Whiteford Bobcats. They were 10-1 last year. Talk about schedule.
What I love most about this schedule, when you look at the whole thing, Schoolcraft.
Oh yeah, week 3.
Quality.
That was the one that jumped out at me.
Yeah, quality. And I talked to Coach Mensing a little bit about this game over text or I don't know, whatever it was, Twitter. You know, giving them kudos for scheduling that game.
Yeah,
that's a great game. Schoolcraft is a very, very statewide quality program for its division. They went 9-3 last year. They lost to Montague in the regionals, and they don't have down years in Schoolcraft, so they're going to be good. Whiteford's going to be good. It's at home. That's going to be a great game. I think that's one to get excited over, Schoolcraft. And of course, when you go down the line here, the games I got highlighted at Clinton and away at Blissfield.
I think Blissfield week 1 after they put a whooping on Blissfield.
Yeah, that was outrageous.
Blissfield turned their season around and ended up having a nice year. They were 7-5, made the playoffs, but I think that's a game that they cannot look past.
I think
it's going to be a tough game.
When you take the thousands of games in Michigan high school football, the ones I paid attention to, maybe weren't 1,000, the 100 games I paid attention to, that Whiteford demolishing of Blissfield was the most surprising, because Blissfield, I knew they were going to be good. You knew they were going to be good. Whiteford knew they were going to be good. But boy, they beat the snot out of them.
They opened the can.
I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. But this year, I think Blissfield's going to be a little more prepared for that double wing. So we'll see.
I think you're right. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah,
that
and
game
Whiteford's going to be tough.
All right, so we're halfway through.
We are.
Let's jump into the Huron League. We've been going for about 20 minutes. So
what are the people saying? They're saying all kinds of stuff on there, but I don't know.
Well, I'd just rather focus on the podcast, I guess.
Okay, let's do it.
Thank everybody for watching us live. I'm not sure why we did this, but
yeah.
Okay. So let's jump into Airport. Airport was 4-5 last season. We talked a little bit about their schedule already. Week 1, they play Ida, who was 8-3, and I just think that's a much better game for the Jets than playing Monroe like they did last year. Even though they competed and gave them Monroe all they could handle, I just think this is a better way to go. What else jumps out at you here?
Well, I look at the beginning of their schedule. At Ida, at SMCC, home against Groseal. That's 3 tough games.
I've got all 3 of those on there. Another one that jumps out at me is just week 9 against Melvindale. That's Melvindale is coached by Derek Anderson, who was a great player.
Airport,
back in I think he graduated 2001 from Carleton Airport, so that'll be kind of neat.
I wonder if he and Coach Duffy have a couple cocktails after the game. They probably will.
I would assume so. I don't know. Probably depends who wins. I don't know, or
and
not.
Winner buys, I think.
Okay, fair enough. So. I think week 2 and 3 are going to be tough. SMCC in Groseal.
They got to win one. They got to win one of those. They come out of that 2-1. You look out. For
they'll be all right.
Look out for Airport.
I think that's a good way to look at that.
Yep.
All right. So obviously staying in the Huron League, we're going to go with the Flat Rock Rams, who finished 4-5 last year. And I actually read an article in the News Herald that talked about the new playoff system. And last year at 4-5, Flat Rock would have got in.
That's right.
With that record.
That's right.
And
it's going to help. It's going to help Flat Rock. It's going to help SMCC. The smaller schools, it's going to help. They're going to get in with those. Definitely in at 5-4, and as you said, 4-5.
Well, and it helped that they beat 2 Class A schools last year, and Garden City had a lot of wins. And even though they probably would have been 7th or 8th in the Huron League, they competed in the Western Weighing. I think they were 2nd in the Western Weighing. So talk about Flat Rock's schedule. They switched it up a little bit, at least week 1.
Yeah, I like the game against Thurston. I think that's going to be a really good contest. It's at home for Flat Rock.
I think you're better getting Thurston early.
Sure.
We saw Thurston scrimmage last year, and they only had like 16 kids on the sideline, and I think they had 20 maybe week 1, and then by once school started, they had probably 30 kids out there. So I think they're better off getting them early. To me, week 3, 4, 5, and 6 jump out where you've got the View, Milan, SMCC, and Groseal right in a row.
That's brutal.
That's a pretty brutal stretch, and that was. They had a 4-game losing streak last year. Actually, I think it was a 5-game losing streak last year.
Those were the teams they played.
Yeah.
They finished the season super strong, winning their last 3.
Right.
But those teams you just mentioned were the ones where they. And if you look at the scores, they
competed.
They should have beat SMCC last year. Central won it
was 28-27
on a heave to Cousino in the end zone. Flat Rock was there to win that game, and they very well should have, basically. And every other game they competed in.
They lost to Groseal 33-28. They lost to Airport 25-21. So there were some games right there. And I was at the Groseal game, and Flat Rock was up 14-0 in that game early on as they were running everything.
Flat Rock is no longer a team to take lightly.
No,
no longer a team to take. They're going to come to play. If you don't play well, they're going to beat you.
Yeah, I would agree with that. All right, let's jump over to the Groseal Red Devils, who were 9-1 and the Huron League champs last season. And give us your thoughts on their schedule. There's a few games that jump out at me.
I like the Richard game. I think that's a good.
I'm glad they played
a nice game. I know you are. Your daughter goes there, and Richard. That's a tough game for them. I mean, it is. The schedule Groseal, who's Coach Bodner was the coach of the East All-Star team that just took place this weekend. The state East versus West. So he's recognized. We've recognized him as a great coach for years, and the state obviously has as well. That's a tough game for Richard.
Yeah, well, for both teams.
Yeah,
because Richard's building a pretty nice program over there, and a nice thing about Richard is they do have some kids from the island, so those kids know each other.
Sure, that's a great game.
A little bit of a rivalry.
That's a great game. The other games I have highlighted: at home against Milan, who I like this year a ton.
Week 2, right away.
At SMCC. SMCC is going to look to get that little bit of revenge from last year after GI beat them I was at that game. They beat them pretty good, and at Riverview. So they got the games that two of the teams that we think may be at the top of the Huron League potentially. They're both on the road, SMCC and Riverview, and that Crestwood game is going to be interesting too. They're a program that's
on the rise. They finished 8-2 last year. Yep. They won the Western Wayne.
Yep.
And
that's a tough schedule.
Yeah, that's a tough schedule for Groseal. Right. And one thing for them is for sure they will be very, very good defensively, mainly because of their two linebackers. Yeah. But they will be very good defensively. But if they can find a way to score, they'll be a tough team to beat every week. So, all right, let's jump in. Next, we got 4 more teams. We got New Boston Huron, who finished 2-7 last year.
Played a bunch of young kids.
Had a first-year coach. I think probably a little bit more prepared this year. You know, he got the job late last year.
Right.
And so what jumps out at you here?
Well, I like that they open up with Melvindale. I think they can get that W.
They should play Melvindale. They're about the same size when it comes to enrollment. They're both right on the cusp of A and B. And that makes sense. Melvindale was 2-7 last year, so they have identical records.
Right.
And then they're going to close with Garden City again, who was 6-4, but Huron beat them last year. What other game jumps out?
I got Airport highlighted. I just like that. I like the matchup of Airport and Huron. I just think they're kind of similar, schools, and where this game could be that 6th win for Airport or Huron. Whoever wins that game, I think it's a pivotal game for the season, and get some tough games at Groseal, at Milan. 2 games I got highlighted where those are tough places to play.
I think in looking at Huron's schedule, they're week 2 against Riverview. If they can compete there, after week 1 Melvindale, they've got week 3 Jefferson, then week 4 they've got Airport. They could potentially start off 3-1.
Could.
Which would be good for a team that did have a lot of youth last year.
I saw them last year, and that youth didn't play youthful. I saw them one time last year, and
that's right. You saw them against SMCC.
Almost beat SMCC.
Falcons won that game 28-23.
I was like, wow, this is going to be a good team. They're young. They're very young.
Yeah.
They had a couple big sophomores, I believe, who are going to be juniors. Yeah. And their quarterback was darn good, athletic, tall, fast, and I think Huron is a team to watch for. Although the schedule at Milan, at Groseal, at Flat Rock, that's tough.
Yeah, I would agree with that. All right, let's jump over to Milan. The Big Reds were 8-3 last season. What jumps out on their schedule at you?
Well, I think they open up with Bridgeport. I think they'll put
that's at home
a pretty good licking on Bridgeport.
They kind of handled them last year, although Bridgeport scored the last 4 touchdowns of the game. It was a weird game.
That was weird.
And then they added Tecumseh week 9, who was 2-7 instead of Ypsi Lincoln. Tecumseh's probably a school that's maybe a little more their size, even though they're in the SEC.
That's a good game. I like that game. I like Tecumseh playing Milan. I think it's a really good matchup. The games I got highlighted at Groseal, home against SMCC.
Back-to-back, weeks 2 and 3.
Right, and then at Riverview. I think those are the pivotal games for those 3 teams, really, or 4 teams I mentioned.
Right.
Who can come out of those games with the better record is going to determine who wins the league, in my opinion. And like you mentioned, the Tecumseh game, and it sets up as a pretty good schedule. At Riverview is going to be. At Riverview is going to be the one that might just determine the league.
Week 8.
Week 8. Or no, it's not week 8. It's week 5.
Oh, week 5. My bad.
At Airport's week 8.
Okay.
Which won't be easy either, in my opinion. Right. But I think that's going to be the game might just determine the league champion. We'll find out. We're going to save who we think's going to win the league for 2 months down the road.
Yeah,
from now.
down the road.
But the season I think it starts 2 months from almost today, right? About 63 days, something like that, this season. Yeah. So. Starts on a Thursday this year.
All right, we've got 3 more teams we've got to get through here. So let's move on to, we were going alphabetical there in the Hearing League, but somehow.
Well, Monroe.
Jefferson.
Monroe Jefferson. It works out.
There you go. Monroe Jefferson. Jefferson was 0-9. They've lost 19 straight. I'm going to say that'll change this year.
Do they get off the snide?
They will get off the snide.
Week 1. You heard it.
I think. Let's go ahead. Talk about schedule.
You know more about Annapolis than I do. I thought that might be a tough game. You think Jefferson's going to put it on them? I hope they do. I hope they put it on them.
Here's what I would say is Dearborn Heights Annapolis was 2-7 last year. They play in the Western Wayne, which isn't a tough.
We're going to talk about the Western Wayne next.
As it isn't tough a conference as Huron is. Yeah. Week 9 jumps out at me. They've got 1-7 Voyager. Detroit Voyager, who used to be Detroit Consortium. A couple of games that jump out at me is weeks 2 and weeks 3. Flat Rock and Huron.
Week 3.
If you look at the first 3 weeks of the season for Monroe Jefferson, they're winnable games.
Yep. At home against Huron, I had highlighted as well. It's going to be an interesting game to see where Jefferson's at. That's going to be a game. It's going to be a barometer for them.
Well, and I think you can look at last year's game when they played Grosseille. Wasn't that game 7-0? Grosseille won that game. Jefferson competed. I think it's just a matter of time, and I think it'll come, relatively quickly. But I think they're going to compete. Absolutely. So, okay, let's jump over to the Riverview Pirates, who were 7-3 last season. Let's talk about their schedule. I know you got a beef with.
I got a little bit of a beef with the Pirates. The Western Wayne. We talked about this. Their opener with Romulus. Romulus is the perfect team for the way the playoffs are set up now. They're going to get there. I don't know, what was Romulus? Click on Romulus. What were they at last year?
They were 3-6.
They were 3-6, okay. But they typically get you a little bit. What were they the year before? 6-4, 9-2, 6-4. So they typically get you 6 to 7 wins.
Right.
In the Western Wayne, which is probably the worst conference in the state of Michigan.
I wouldn't agree with that, but okay.
One of them.
I wouldn't agree with that.
One of them. All right. Come on. Let's schedule someone with a little bit of Riverview. Is a top.
Gary throwing it out
Riverview.
there.
I want to see because you know why I'm gonna go watch.
I couldn't disagree with you more, Gary. I want to go on record. I
went to that game last year, and I'm going to go to it again this year. Romulus. It's at home.
They're probably going to throw things
against Riverview.
If they see you there.
No, but I think the fans. They want Riverview. What I'm getting at is Riverview is becoming a top-notch program.
Well, I would agree with that, and I think what's going on there is Romulus, their enrollment has dropped big time. They were up over 1,000.
That game isn't going to work.
A few years ago, and they've dropped down. Their enrollment keeps getting smaller and smaller, and they don't quite have the teams they've had in the past. But I think Riverview was probably more worried about not having a game. It's close to home. Let's look at others on the schedule here.
I know.
Go to week 9. Go to week 9. You have the Western Wayne on there as well. You got Redford Thurston. I think Thurston will give Riverview all they can handle in that game.
I disagree.
Okay. What else you got on Riverview's schedule?
I got home against Flat Rock.
Okay.
And on the road against SMCC. Central went in there and beat them last year in their home facility. I had all their fans in my ear telling me that I know that Central's going to lose the game, and I said, they might, but that didn't happen. They're going to have revenge on them on the road at Navarre to beat the Falcons, and again, that might be a game that decides who wins the.
It could, of course, it could come down to week 8 when they play Grosseille for the Colvin Cup. So, all right, so let's move on to our last team that we're going to talk about, and that is the Monroe St. Mary Catholic Central Falcons. They were 9-3 last year. Looks like they got an 8-game schedule going on. Why don't you tell us what jumps out here?
Well, of course, the opener, Madison Heights Madison.
Right, Madison Heights Madison was 13-1 last year, and obviously they lose their best player.
They lost their best player, but they got a bunch of
quarterback,
Austin Brown. They got a bunch of good players. They're good every year. If you go there, look at their record over the year. They're a 10-win team, 9 wins, just about every year. That's going to be a great challenge. It is at Navarre, which will help. And
get a little home cooking over there.
A little home cooking. Central lost to them 2 years ago, right?
In the heartbreaking
fashion. They're looking for revenge. I don't think that's why Coach Kipp scheduled them, but. That's a tough opener. That's a great
tough opener. I think they've had problems finding games. And tell us about Week 9. They left that open. It's probably due to scheduling, but a lot of people think leaving Week 9 open is a good thing, as long as you got enough wins to get into playoffs.
it can be a good thing if your numbers are down. If you remember last year, Central went into some of these games with 19 kids.
They were like a MASH unit.
Yeah, a lot of teams are. By week 9, a lot of these schools with 25, 30 kids on the roster are hurting. Jackson Lumen Christi has left week 9 open for a while. Nuval, I think, has at some point. And, the reasoning, I don't know, but that's just the way it's going to be.
Okay.
And some other games I had highlighted, at Milan and at Flat Rock.
Okay.
Central lost at Flat Rock 2 years ago, 14-12, I believe the score was. So that's going to be a game that they might recall. And I think it's going to be a great game. At Milan, again, one of those games that could determine the whole shebang.
Week 3 and 4 jumped out at me. They had Milan and Riverview back-to-back.
Yeah.
I think you have to go through those schools if you want to win the Heron League. So, okay, well, that wraps up our talking about the schedule. We went like 36 minutes on a podcast. We've been live the whole time. But anyways, not too bad. We're just going to kind of break off the podcast at that. So that was our 2019 week or episode 2 of our podcast. So we thank you for listening to the podcast. And, don't be afraid to leave comments if you listen.
On the new site.
Yeah, we ended up with a lot better numbers than I thought we would get on the first podcast. I was looking at the numbers this afternoon. So thanks, everybody, for listening, and we appreciate it.